සරනා ෂට්චක්‍ර ආලෝකමත් කරනා සංසාර චක්‍රය කෙමෙන් ලිහනා විරුපරපුරේ රාවණා රජුගේ සිව්හෙලේ යක් රකුස්නා දෙව් ශක්තියයිනේ චක්‍ර 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 චක්‍ර
Arena with Doshantri. Good evening, Chakra FM listeners. You're listening to Arena with Doshantri. You all know we have been discussing about global risks 2034, the report published by World Economic Forum. That report focuses on the longer-term horizon, highlighting risks that may become most severe over the next decade. While the short-term risks landscape described in the report, if not addressed, contribute to these negative longer-term outcomes, attention, planning and action today can still set us on a markedly more positive trajectory. To discuss about this, we have one of the best persons in the world to discuss this matter with. There are many politicians in the world, but there are few leaders. So this is one of the leaders in South Australia and Australia, and he's none other than the opposition leader, David Speirs. Honourable David Speirs, Minister of Parliament, is not only the leader of opposition, he is the shadow minister for environment as well, and he used to be the minister of environment as well in the past. So he is the best person to talk about because he's not only a politician, he is a leader and he's a true lover of environment, and he has taken many steps to protect our environment and preserve it. So, Honourable David Speirs, Minister of Parliament, Leader of the Opposition, we warmly welcome you to Arena with Doshantri. Arena with Doshantri. Good evening, Honourable Minister David Speirs.
Good evening, Doshantri. It's so good to be on Arena this evening. And as you say, we're talking about a really important issue, and that's our precious natural environment. It's something I'm really passionate about. I'm so grateful for you giving me the opportunity to speak to your listeners this evening.
Honourable David Speirs, Minister of Parliament and Opposition Leader in South Australia, I would like to ask the first question. When we read the report about the world risks, global risks from World Economic Forum, it actually is pretty scary. The next decade will usher in a period of significant change, stretching our adaptive capacity to the limit. So, environment has the most significant global risk for the next decade. Nearly all environmental risks are included in the top 10 rankings for the decade ahead. So extreme weather events are anticipated to become even more severe as the top ranked risks over the next decade. So as Shadow Minister for Environment in South Australia and former Environmental Minister and an opposition leader, I would like to ask from you, Honourable David Speirs, how do you see the next 10 years of our globe with when you compare to what's going to happen to environment? What are your thoughts? I would like to know that first.
Well, Doshantri, the problems and the issues that are highlighted in this report are extremely concerning. But I suppose there are no real surprises there because unfortunately these issues have been on the horizon for many decades. Overpopulation, growing cities pushing into precious natural environments, the clearance of land for mining industry, pollution in our rivers, in our seas, in our oceans. We know that these problems have been there for many years, and we have been aware of these, but what we now need to do is come up with solutions. Let us see the World Economic Forum's report, which has recently been released, as an opportunity to drive us towards action. And we do see examples of action right across the world, so we shouldn't give up hope. We should look for opportunities to make change. Look at the movement that is occurring around single-use plastics and reducing the amount of rubbish in our oceans. You know, that is something that has really gathered pace in recent years. And as South Australia's Environment Minister, we were the first jurisdiction in Australia to ban a whole range of single-use plastics back in 2020. But we're not the only place in the world to do that. Those bans have been spreading right across the globe, and I want to see more countries, more states, more provinces, and more jurisdictions across the world do that. And I just give that as one example. Another area that we're seeing a lot of progress and momentum in is around climate change and the significant reductions that are happening certainly in Western countries around global emissions. But there remain concerns in the developing world that the emissions continue to grow. So we do need to get a handle on that. One of the areas that worries me the most is biodiversity decline. As much as being in a climate crisis, we're in a biodiversity crisis with so many species of animal and plant start fading into extinction. This is an issue that I don't think we've got a real handle on going forward. And we want to see species that are present today there for our grandchildren to enjoy. And something that keeps me awake at night is the idea that magnificent creatures such as elephants and lions and tigers might be a thing of myth in the future, like we look back in the dinosaurs today. So the report's right to highlight these challenges, but we've got to use it as a goad to action for solutions.
Arena with Doshandri. On behalf of Chakra FM listeners from Arena with Doshandri, I would like to thank you for that nice explanation, Honourable Minister David Speirs. Now I would like to know, as South Australia, how have you prepared? How have you been preparing for the next decade? What are the precautions and how do you see the next 10 years for Australia, for South Australia?
Well, Doshandri, the challenge really for Australia and South Australia is to reverse decline and make sure that we're showing international leadership with this sort of stuff, because we can be a beacon for other nations when it comes to being able to guide the way forward with real sustainability and real solutions. Look, our responses around renewable energy is really good in South Australia and Australia. And I would like us to be able to look at other solutions that can be modelled by other nations and jurisdictions around the world. I want us to be looking at nuclear energy in South Australia, the cleanest form of energy, in my view, that can can provide baseload energy, which in turn is emissions free. So that's an area I think we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at halting biodiversity decline, looking at rewilding the natural world, making sure that we are looking after our national parks and expanding them. And that's something when I was Environment Minister I looked at time and time again. How can we rewild areas, reintroduce native species, work with zoos and animal charities, conservation charities to get insurance populations of these species and then reintroduce them into safe environments. We need to be removing pest species from the landscape. Unfortunately, Australia has too many pests in the landscapes: foxes, camels, goats, cats. There's just a handful of things that cause huge damage to our natural world and eat native species. So we really need to get a handle on the feral pests across the landscape as well. And of course, one issue that I mentioned just a moment ago was the single-use plastics. We're doing well there, but we need to look at ways to minimize plastic use, to create a truly circular economy so we can reuse materials again and again and again. So there's some challenges facing Australia, but also things that I think we have the prospect of doing well with.
Arena with Doshandri. Arena with Doshandri. Arena with Doshandri. Thanks, David. It is good to see that Australia is preparing for the next decade, and especially South Australia is preparing for the next decade. So, lastly, I would like to ask from you, when you compare to World Economic Forum, it's really scary what they're saying about the environment, and a little while ago you explained as well. So, with this critical change to Earth systems in the next decade, do you think that we have hope to overcome this somehow? Is there any miracle going to happen, or is it us that should be working towards a miracle?
Well, Doshandri, I think there is hope. I think there has to be hope, because if there's no hope, what's the point? We'd just give up. We'd continue to trash the environment. We wouldn't appreciate it. We need to teach people to love our natural environment, because when they love it, they'll fight to protect it when it's most at risk. This sort of thing starts locally, so we can see the problems as really significant, really overwhelming, really worrying, insurmountable. But if we start locally and look at our own lives and think, what can we do in our own backyard? That's where hope really begins. One example is just taking part in a local beach cleanup, for instance. There's a movement called Take 3 for the Sea, and when you go down the beach and you see 2 or 3 bits of litter, pick them up and put them on the bin on the way home. That's just one way that someone can make a big difference, because if everyone does that, our beaches would be clean, our oceans would have less plastic in them, and our wildlife would have less challenges to face. So that's just one example, but that's what I want your listeners to think about today. How can they manifest hope? By small actions in their lives that'll make a big difference for our precious natural environment, because that's how we will make sure that the challenges we face throughout the next decade are not insurmountable.
Thank you so much for your time, Honourable David Speirs, Minister of Parliament, Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Minister for Environment and former Minister for Environment in South Australia. We thank you so much for your precious time that you spent with us with Arena with Doshandri. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me today, Doshandri. I hope that your listeners have enjoyed this little chat between us, and hopefully they've been inspired to make a little bit of change in their lives that will help our precious environment.
Arena with Doshandri.